So as you can see from the title of the video, this one's going to be all about spring flowers as spring allegedly kind of moves in. The spring flowers from across the world, obviously we don't have all these things grow in the grim UK where I'm from, and some may be bubbling into summer. The way I see it, blossoms, there's a couple of blossoms, they are spring because the flowers come before the fruit, don't they? So that's my interpretation. I'm sure it's probably grim where you are. When I'm filming this, we're still in February. Who knows when it'll come out? So it's grim. There are things like snowdrops and daffodils kind of pushing through in a kind of false dawn spring. That'll no doubt be wiped out very quickly when March is a terrible month. We don't need me to give you a running commentary of what the weather's like. We all know. British after all, it's all we talk about. So yeah, let's crack on. So first up on the list is one from Perfumer H, and it is called the aforementioned Snowdrop. Obviously snowdrops don't have a smell. This is a kind of interpretation of what it would smell like. Perfumer H have some stunning fragrances. This is one I'm going to have to buy. I think it's discontinued, but I think you can actually ask them, and they have batches. They have different batches for different seasons, so it's probably about. Anyway, what Snowdrop smells like is it has some kind of greener feels in there. Obviously like a snowdrop, maybe some lily of the valley or something like that. There's also a kind of warm richness from something like an orange blossom, and I think the main note is obviously jasmine, and obviously that's a white flower as well, but it's kind of the greener but sweet, lovely rounder jasmine, and that's what it smells like. It does smell like this kind of scented white flower. I think there's a bit of kind of well, there must be orris or something like that, giving it an almost powderiness there, and I think it all works together beautifully. And if snowdrops did have a smell, well, they'd probably smell just like this. I think it's a very beautiful one, and I'm not going to make this video 7 hours long. And snowdrops are probably the first flower of spring, aren't they? So it smells special, and it is a special one. So that's a Snowdrop from Perfumer H. So next up is another of them white flowers, and that's Lily of the Valley. Now these actually in reality are beautiful little flowers. They look a little bit like snowdrops, don't they? With their little bent over kind of doffing their cap to you kind of look. Now Lily of the Valley is it can be quite a soapy scent, but a bit green, sometimes a little bit sharp. It's that kind of a white floral. It can sort of grow to be a bit too much, a bit too soapy and rich and thick and whatnot. But the one I've gone for Lily of the Valley is Kissing from Kilian. Now this is a really interesting one. It's kind of a gourmandy one. There's lots of like vanilla, sugar, a little bit of a creamy vibe about it, but it's all measured, it's all balanced by this beautiful Lily of the Valley, which cuts through it with a greenness and a sharpness. And as a flower, it seems to work beautifully with kind of these gourmand notes as that balance. So this one is not kind of snuggly, pleasant, a little bit sweet, but that greenness with the Lily of the Valley and a little bit of that kind of soapy touch mixes in with them notes, which again stops them being sickly and too overly gourmand. It's a beautiful one. So that's Kissing from Kissing blah 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 from Kilian. So next up is one of my favourites, nice little yellow flower that pops up, and that's a narcissus or a daffodil. And I think we all know this. There's probably been a video recently about my favourite Narcissus fragrances, but one I've picked for that is Fate. How could I not pick that from Amouage? It's all these beautiful rich florals, gorgeous white florals, different. It's like a rainbow, a kaleidoscope of flowers and colours and spice. The main spice in it is clove. It's not too strong running through it, and it's got that resinous warmth from the resins, and it's musky. It's got this kind of vintage feel about it, but the Narcissus is definitely the main flower, and it's that greeny yellowy feel through it, and it has just that little hint of soft, sharp, tiny sweetness running through it, and it just is. It's a magnificent flower, isn't it? When you smell it in fragrances, you're very aware of it being there, but as a flower and a floral on its own, I think it's quite subtle, but it makes its presence known. And Narcissus, when they come through, daffodils, they are the official kind of beginning of spring, if you like, here anyway in the UK, and they grow everywhere. People have planted bulbs literally everywhere. They will pop up in the middle of this path, the trees, they'll pop up by the sides of roads, middle of fields. They're just everywhere, and it's just these little bobbing crowned smiley sunshiny flowers that just make you smile, and are quite easy to acquire, although you can buy them from supermarkets if you like. So for Narcissus is a Amouage. Then we have Iris, which don't really grow around here, but they are springy flowers, I believe, and it's difficult to pick one. So I've gone for a really obvious one, and that's Dior Homme. And the reason I've gone for Dior Homme is because it's quite a bright, vibrant, beautiful, classy fragrance. I think it does well to have a more floral iris, although the flower doesn't actually have a smell. But that more kind of floral blue flower idea of iris is running through Dior Homme. It's mixed with lavender, which gives it kind of more an aromatic freshness there. And obviously there's smooth woods. The iris is a little bit chocolatey, and it's pure class. And iris, to me, people call it the lipsticky thing. I guess that's an association, but to me it always makes me think of them flowers, because it does have a kind of bluey purple smell about it. That obviously the chalky, earthy, potatoey orris, slightly different, isn't it? And I think where the idea comes from, I think I've said this before and this is so boring, is they used violet. Orris gave the texture, and the violet in these old perfumes gave that kind of, or lipsticks gave that kind of flavour that we're familiar with. But anyway, that's another thing. So yeah, Dior Homme is in itself a springy fragrance. It's fresh, it's vibrant, it's classy, it's easy to wear, and it was the first kind, well, probably not the first, but it was the first most famous one in male marketed fragrances to really use that kind of makeup-y, lipsticky iris. It's a beautiful one. So for iris is Dior. The next we do have violet. I think it's always one that's going to follow that, and that this again is not particularly a UK flower, but Viole Nere from Fusciuni is kind of what the whole fragrance is about. It's about the end of winter and the pushing through and the blossoming of these beautiful purple flowers, and it's just magnificent. It starts all cold, and that's from the orris, kind of like a dusty snow, dry and you know, a little bit barren, and straight away you start the violet starts to just grow through it and grow through it until it's like a blossomed sweet violet flower, a little bit of powderiness and still over the orris, and this kind of earthy patchouliness. Then it's just a magnificent fragrance that really does kind of imagine and bring to life spring. It's a gorgeous one. The violet does, like I say, does different things in it. It's that floral sweetness, that purple flower. It's a little bit of powderiness. It's got that kind of dark sweetness, which again is kind of a nod to winter. But as it kind of brightens and gets more powdery, like a big purple cloud, pushes you towards the colours of spring and things like that. I think it's a beautiful flower, and it's beautifully done in this one. So that's Viole Nere from Fusciuni. Next is Hyacinth. It's a tricky one I've used here, because obviously bluebells as well, we're putting them together and they don't smell a million miles apart, do they? Really. Obviously we're not bluebells, and hyacinths grow same kind of time and that, and the blue flowers again. I think they might be part of the same family, whatever. But hyacinth is a kind of bluey, purpley smelling one, and it does have that. If you ever, well, never pick bluebells, that is illegal. If you ever rubbed your finger on bluebells, I think that's legal. Then you get this beautiful kind of sweet blue purpliness that you get from the hyacinths, and they just smell. They smell magnificent, don't they? It's the start when heat comes. I think the colours come and the sweetness comes, and the hyacinths really kind of typify that. And again, that touch of blue, which is really rare in nature, adds a kind of magicalness. There's something about them that we love to smell and we love to touch them. People might like to have them in their houses and stuff like that. What fragrance have I picked for hyacinth as I'm waffling on? It's from Aromatics, and it's Purple Rain. I'm not entirely sure this is a listed note in there, it might be. But it is, it's violet, it's lilac, it's all these sorts of things. But I definitely get a kind of hyacinth slash maybe bluebell feel in there, a blue flower, which always, you know, goes well with the purple. And it's kind of, they are a bit purpley in colour, aren't they? And this fragrance is just all these magnificent bluey purple flowers, and that kind of smell of late spring. For me, that's when you're starting to move into summer, isn't it? And they just makes you feel good, these flowers. I don't know what it is about purple flowers, but it's that right level of sweetness. I'm banging on about the same thing again. It's that right level of sweetness, almost good enough to eat kind of feel, aren't they, as well? And it's quite calm. It's quite a calming feeling. I think that's because the weather's warm and still and peaceful. There's not this mad wind we've got now, and there's not things falling to bits, trees collapsing, etc. So Purple Rain from Aromatics for hyacinth. Next is Lilac, and there could be quite a few fragrances for this. Was considered quite a vintage kind of smelling thing. I think it's coming back now. Again, the lilac is purple. They all seem to have a pattern here, don't they? But with a kind of, has a sharpness about it, lilac. It's quite big and heady and quite room filling actually. In real life the flowers actually are. But it also has this little hint of a greenness, a sharpness in there. Not too much, and it's really magnificent. And again, it's one of them. Just makes you feel rather good, doesn't it? And when you smell lilacs in bloom across places, it really fills the air. And again, more of a late summer, late spring, early summer kind of thing round here anyway. And that, so what I'll pick for that, sorry I'm waffling again, is a dropped Issey from Issey Miyake, which this is a lilac in a really weird way. Has a kind of soapiness, it has a milky kind of gourmandiness, and the ambroxan in it gives it this kind of more of a nice muskiness rather than a sharp hideous one, which adds the kind of a ozonic breeze working with them slightly gourmand notes, which makes it really quite beautiful. And it's one I'd wear not when it's very hot, because it's not an airy, easy breezy kind of one. It does have a bit of oomph behind it. but it does make you think of spring and happiness and coziness, and it's just a beautiful fragrance. So that's a dropped Issey, from Issey Miyake for lilac. So next is two things of the same thing ultimately. They're just brewed, prepared, macerated, grown, whatever the word is. Not grown, but they are the same thing, but they smell very different because of the way they're, whatever the word is. And first up is Neroli. Now Neroli is definitely not a note I enjoy. Thankfully we don't really get orangey blossomy things growing around here, but it's not something I enjoy. I can imagine it. I'm sure I might have smelt it in the wild. It's kind of a sharp, it does have a little oranginess about it, but maybe that's because of what it is, I don't know. But it's a bit bitter, it's a bit sharp, it's a bit citric, if you like. And generally I don't enjoy it in fragrances. However, there's always exceptions, and one of them is called Èglantier from Meiland Perfumery. Now this is I've talked about it so much. It's kind of a recreation of the smell of two seas coming together, but they don't actually merge. They just sit side by side in harmony, which is, funnily enough, I think a good way of describing Neroli and orange blossom actually. But anyway, that's by the by. So the Neroli in this provides this kind of sharp edge to it all, this kind of airiness, and a little tiny bit of its own sweetness. And the fragrance itself is a little bit salty, it's a little bit warm. There might actually be orange blossom in it as well, off the top of my head, giving it that kind of like a warmer sea and a kind of more North Sea, a Nordic Sea. I mean, I think it is the North Sea and Danish Sea or Norway, something. I don't know which river seas it is, so don't question me. But yeah, one's kind of a little bit warmer and calmer, and one's a little bit kind of rougher and colder and what have you. And the Neroli, to me, provides that feeling with a little bit of saltiness going through it all. I mean, this kills two birds with one stone. I think this is a beautiful fragrance to wear in the spring or the warmer weather. And it's also got is it rosehip, which if you know the smell, that kind of red kind of spicy berry kind of feel to me. It's a rosehip is them things, I know what they are, but yeah, because I can see that, and it kind of, with the woodiness and the muskiness, all comes together in harmony through the clashing of all the things. It's one you'd have to try. It's magnificent, it's a genius fragrance, but the Neroli is a big part of it. So for Neroli is Èglantier from Meiland. On the other side of Neroli is, of course, orange blossom. Now orange blossom again can be quite a thick, rich, kind of sunsetty feel to me. It smells of that kind of dark orange colour. Now sometimes it depends what it's mixed with, but generally speaking it was quite often mixed with things like vanilla and stuff, which is one of the main things of this fragrance, which gives it kind of almost gourmandy feel. But what it does to me is it adds a kind of a warmth, a dark orange warmth to a fragrance, and quite often the texture and the kind of rich feeling about it adds more to that. It's quite beautiful actually. But what I pick for that is the most famous one, of course, is Kilian's Love Don't Be Shy. Now this is predominantly orange blossom, marshmallow, muskiness. There's a bit of Neroli very early on, very slight, giving it a bit of sharpness there, but then it turns into this kind of warm, rich, syrupy sea of orange, and with like marshmallows bobbing on top. You can actually smell the marshmallows. I imagine this will be a lovely warm winter drink actually. There probably are things like, you probably get orange blossom rice pudding and stuff, which again it would kind of lean towards that way. And it also, orange blossom, can have a bit of fluffiness about it. Again, I don't know if that's what I've experienced it being mixed with, or whether it is. I've smelt actual orange blossom, the oil stuff, essential oil thing, from a perfume kind of place. So yeah, I know it can be what it can do and stuff. So smelling it in its not raw form, but you know what I mean, in its perfume basic form, it's a note I can pick out quite well, which is quite rare for me. So yeah, that's orange blossom and Kilian's Love Don't Be Shy. Finally, is a kind of cheat flower, isn't it? Because it's practically an all-round year flower, and at this moment there'll be buds and stuff in spring more so than the flowers. But rose, how could I not have rose? I could pick any particular fragrance from anywhere, but what I'm going to go for is, because I think it's more spring-like, is a rose patchouli. Oh, you know where I'm going. Why I had to pick this one, really, didn't I? And that is Portrait of a Lady from Frederic Malle. And that's because this is a kind of, to me, a springy rose. It's also a cold, lonely rose. It is predominantly a kind of sharper rose, like a, you know, orangey red rose. That does get a little bit darker and a little bit sweeter through it. But actually, I think it's quite cold and lonely, but at the same time regal. And the patchouli, there's more in it than just these two notes, obviously, but it is predominantly what it is. The patchouli is quite earthy and grainy, and it just does make you think of a lonely rose growing, to me, on a kind of almost still icy hilltop or mountain, kind of bobbing in the wind, that kind of dry earthiness. It's not particularly soily or muddy, but it's more that kind of dry earth to me. And that's all I need to say about it, isn't it? And rose can come in so many different forms, but this is a kind of spring rose, if you like. Spring roses, in my head, tend not to be sweet or full-bodied or whatever. They tend to be a little bit sharper, a little bit colder and that. So for rose is a Portrait of a Lady. Finally is probably the most famous, most beautiful of all kind of blossoms, flowers, what have you, across the world, because it's so beautiful and striking. Cherry blossom. I could have gone for many of this. It does have a slight smell, and I think different cherry blossom trees have different smells, but I've obviously gone for Sakura from Dior, and this one is airy. It's kind of green, it's a little bit sweet, but what it has in it, I think it has lilac in it or violet, and when I wear it I can smell lilac, giving it the sweetness. And it does smell pink, which lilac can be either way, and it also kind of smells green, and you can kind of in your head envisage the cherry blossoms falling. And of course there's no greater striking sight in spring than when they fall. Obviously in the UK it ain't Japan, we don't have them everywhere, we don't have that kind of magical beautiful landscape they do, and we don't have the same kind of relationship and meaning to it, but it is this kind of soft dark pinkness, and it makes you feel really good, doesn't it, the smell of it. So for cherry blossom, and the final one in this waffly video, is Sakura from Dior. So thanks folks. There's probably interruptions from the wind. I also lost my little bullet pointed notes from the very beginning, as you could probably tell. I think I've remembered all the fragrances, and most of the kind of impression of them. But spring flowers, they just make you feel good. That first sign of life and colour, sweet nectar and sweet smell is just, it is the best feeling ever. after the goddamn effing barren, endless, cold, wet, miserable, freezing winter. Just that carpet of colour. Even things like daisies, buttercups, they're just the most beautiful sight on earth when you think what's gone before. So yeah, before I get swept away in this hurricane, what about you? What's your favourite spring flowers? What fragrances and fragrance notes kind of make you think of spring? Are there any flowers I missed from here that grow in your part of the world that you can get in a fragrance? Alright folks, thanks for watching, bye.